In my opinion, right now, it's not quite there yet, but based on how things are shaping up, Andor does have the potential to be the best Star Wars property during the Disney era. And I don't think that's any small feat. Obviously, there's a lot of trash that has come out under Disney Star Wars, most notably The Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker. Just absolutely terrible. But there's been some good as well. I think Rogue One was absolutely fantastic, and The Mandalorian was absolutely fantastic. Where I picture Andor right now is it's better than most everything. The only thing that's better than it at this point is Rogue One and The Mandalorian, but I think Andor is quickly bridging the gap, and depending on how this season ends, where it goes, and what this is building up towards, if it's a very satisfying ending, there's a very good potential that it will be better than The Mandalorian and Rogue One. It's not there yet, but the potential is there, and I think that's very exciting. It's already better than the Kenobi series. I like the Kenobi series. A lot of the criticism of it I agree with. I think the overuse of that screen technology that they're using is definitely clear. Some of the environments seemed claustrophobic, and some of the writing seemed a bit rushed as well. But there were some great moments in that series, and I really liked it, and it was great to see Ewan McGregor back. And say what you want about the rest of the show, I think the scene where Darth Vader has his mask broken and he's talking to Obi-Wan, that is just such an amazing scene. I do think the show has problems, but Andor, not so much. I think this has just been a really solid show. You're actually having practical sets instead of just relying on the screen technology too much. I saw some of the pictures of the mining village that a lot of the first 3 episodes take place in. It's a little bit more mature, which is awesome. Obviously, it's Star Wars. It should be family oriented, but I don't mind this. I think the original trilogy was a little bit mature in parts. Luke's aunt and uncle being burned to death, that's a little bit mature. I think you can have mature themes, though I would say that for people who do have children, maybe watch this one first before letting your kids watch it. It's not that bad, but it's definitely going to be an individual preference between parents. For example, they say shit in in the show, and that became like a meme. Shit's confirmed as a word in Star Wars, and it's like, yeah, gone. I suppose gone is the day of Nerf herders and stuff like that. We're actually using real swears now. So yeah, it does have a little bit of a mature kind of feel to it, and not just in swearing, but also in how it's respecting its audience. It's a little bit more of a slow burn. It seems like there's some people that don't enjoy it. They just want action and stuff like that. But I think for the people who do kind of want a little bit more serious of a Star Wars venture, something that's kind of respect the intelligence of their audience, this is for them. This is for people like us. And if you're not into that, you just want action, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm glad this show exists, and I hope that the rest of this season kind of plays out in this way where it's slow build-ups to good moments. One of the kind of themes I love about the show is this kind of secrecy and lying and espionage and stuff like that. Everyone in the show is a liar, and that's interesting. But half the time when people lie, they're not lying to deceive. They're lying out of almost an expectation that this is a society under a dictator's rule where people lie as almost habit. This is how you would write a show about the Soviet Union or something like that, where it's like people are lying not to deceive, but to kind of save their own asses, or because it's expected of them. You have Andor talking to his co-worker at the first or second episode, telling him, I need an alibi, we were drinking together, we were hanging out, blah, blah, and his coworker adds his own little stuff to his story. You have these double lives and fake identities from the people who are kind of in the inner circles of the political world and stuff. Luthen Real having his little shop of antiques, but is clearly seeding funding and resources to the rebellion. Mon Mothma having a husband that she's clearly lying to. Then you have the corporate security guys, not wanting to write a report on the 2 dead officers, and, just, we're going to make something up because we don't want the Empire breathing down our back. It's just a lot of lying. But it's interesting because this is pretty much the influence of the Empire on society. It makes the society very untruthful, and I think that's just a great addition to the show. Also, speaking of kind of the Empire, I absolutely love that they've made TIE fighters intimidating. You don't really see that too often in Star Wars because they're normally cannon fodder where they just, they blow up in space, but they kind of treat them like fighter jets basically, where they're flying low and they're loud and, they're intimidating. I think it's great. I think TIE fighters are such a cool kind of fictional aircraft, and it's great to see them be this intimidating. Another thing I absolutely loved is the marketing campaign that led to this series. When this series was first announced that they were going to do a show on Cassian Andor, I didn't hate the idea, but I was just so apathetic towards it. It was like, that guy from Rogue One, he's cool. Okay, I'll give it a shot. I'll watch it. And then when the first commercials started coming out, and we had like 3 main trailers, and then obviously the supporting material on top of that, it really convinced me. So by the time the first episode came along, I went from having very little interest except be willing to give it a chance to being actually really excited about this. And it hasn't disappointed. I think it's lived up to the marketing material. But yeah, the marketing campaign, whoever was in charge of that at Disney, hats off to you. You did a good job. You deserve a raise. This has been marketed perfectly. Also, I really like that they released the first 3 episodes all at once. I thought that was a smart decision. Obviously, Disney Plus has released the first 2 episodes of shows a couple times, but I don't think they've ever released the first 3 episodes of a show. But I think that was a good choice because the first 3 episodes were kind of their own story, to be completely honest. Obviously, yeah, it did feed into the bigger story, and it definitely fit into it. It didn't seem out of place, but it definitely was its own contained story in a lot of aspects. So I think releasing all 3 first episodes was a good choice. So good on them for doing that. Another thought I had, and I don't know how true this is, but I think it's interesting, and I think it's something that's worth pointing out. Andor doesn't just seem to be a good Disney Star Wars property. It seems to be the anti-The Last Jedi. And that's good because The Last Jedi has done a lot of damage to the franchise. It was just an absolutely terrible movie. Andor's kind of doing the opposite of everything that The Last Jedi did. There wasn't the slow burn. It was just jump to the next set piece. It doesn't matter if the payoff is earned, if the action is earned. Just get people there. Weak story that just used to loosely hold together these set pieces. And I know The Rise of Skywalker was a lot worse, but just because that's worse doesn't mean The Last Jedi didn't do that. They clearly were just hopping around to set pieces without much build up to their payoffs, which made the payoffs seem kind of weak. And so this show kind of is taking the opposite, really building towards their payoffs, trusting the audience not to get bored. To me, and I think to a lot of people, that's a lot more fun to watch. Another way it's kind of the opposite of The Last Jedi is they kind of avoid the trap of stringing out conflict for the sake of just having tension. It's a very cheap way of writing, and The Last Jedi did this a lot. So, The Last Jedi, there would be no story if there's open communication. You have a situation where your top pilot is confused about the situation, thinks that the commanding officer is just out to lunch or possibly even deliberately failing them, and so he stages a coup on the ship. And then he's painted as the bad guy. And he was clearly the good guy in that. Hodo, or whatever her name was just... There was no reason to keep the secrets as the way she was. And even if she didn't want to tell the secrets, like, say she was afraid that there was a spy on board or something like that, well, then she could at least, like, say to her top pilot, hey, this is the situation. This is why we can't tell you what's going on. Just trust us. But no, she was very dismissive. And by the way, the whole spy thing, I didn't come up with this. Other people have mentioned this before. Having the spy subplot would have actually fixed a lot of things in The Last Jedi, like the idea of keeping secrets from your top pilots and stuff like that. But, that would actually require competent writers, which Rian Johnson is not. It's just a terrible movie. But in Andor, they just completely sidestep it, where you have that conflict where some of the rebels right before the mission are questioning who Andor is, and they kind of just, they have that moment where they're fighting and stuff like that, but then Andor just tells them, I'm a hired gun, just cuts that tension off completely at the pass. And yeah, you could have strung that tension out for a while, but they didn't. It was just okay, we had this moment, it was interesting. It made the tension seem even better to just kind of nip it in the bud, and it makes the people seem more like people. Like sometimes you're watching shows or movies and you're just like, no, why are they doing that? Like a normal person wouldn't keep that secret, or they wouldn't let tension keep going like that. They're acting very inhuman for the sake of the plot, and Andor's kind of avoiding that completely, where they're just like, yep, we don't need this tension. Clearly you have issues with me. This is my motivation. This is why I'm here. Absolutely loved it. I wish more shows did that, and it's something that was one of the things that just made The Last Jedi seem so cheap and makes the Andor series seem so strong, how they tackle intergroup conflict. So yeah, I think the show is great. Andor has a lot of potential. It's already given us a very cool story so far, and I can't wait to see how the series ends. Depending on how that goes, I'd be willing to call it the best Disney Star Wars property. If not, it's probably going to be in the top 3, right behind Rogue One and The Mandalorian. So that's my thoughts on that. Can't wait to see what happens next.